So I'm John. I'm one of the co-founders and the CTO of a company called Appboy that we're renaming in about a week. So we're soon to be Braze. If you've seen any of our things anywhere, you'll see our new branding. So we're in the mobile lifecycle engagement space. And when I think of mobile, though, really mobile to me now is more of a paradigm. It's not just about like mobile apps. It's really a framework where like the consumers are the ones that are in control of the brand experience. And what makes this challenging for brands is that consumers could be interacting with their brand across a number of different platforms and channels and devices and websites and apps, etc. So it's like customers have a high expectation when they're going to interact with their brand that you're kind of listening and paying attention and know what they're doing on one platform to another. If I'm looking for an Airbnb on my laptop and then I get a push notification about that same Airbnb on my phone, it's actually a really great experience for me. But if the opposite happens, where I'm looking for something on the website and I get a push notification about something totally different, it may not be a great experience for me. So what we want to do in our company's mission is to help brands really with their communications to their consumers. We want to use technology to humanize any communication that a brand is having with a consumer and make sure that we can make it relevant, personable, and like highly contextual and important to the end consumer. So we do this on a global scale. And we work with a number of great consumer brands. So we work with digital-first companies like Lyft and Airbnb, as well as more traditional enterprise companies like Domino's Pizza. So what we do, as I mentioned, it's about communication. So we help them send a lot of different messages. So we send push notifications, in-app messages, browser messages, emails, and other kinds of messages that they orchestrate through our service. And we're hiring a lot of different people, so we're growing pretty fast. We raised the $50 million Series D in August. We're about 190 people headquartered here in New York. And we have had a lot of great success. We have, so we're sending about 30 billion messages every single month to more than 1 billion monthly active users across our customer base. So we're hiring for a lot of different roles. Happy to kind of talk to people more about that later today. And then also a little bit of a brag is that Forrester did an evaluation of our space, and Appboy, soon to be Braze, came out really, really strongly. You can see here in this chart that we actually were a leader in their evaluation of marketing engagement players. So now with the talk that I want to get to, I really want to discuss auto-scaling servers in the cloud. So I kind of want to talk about like the problem space and what this actually means. Auto-scaling is just about automatically having new servers come online as they're needed in your environment without having to have a fixed amount of resources. So there are two main types of things that we process at Appboy. One is data that we collect about consumer behavior. So we may be getting this from a mobile device, consumer brand may be sending it to us. So we have some e-commerce customers that send us their store data every night. And that way we can kind of collect that information to understand who the consumers are. So that way we can make sure that the messages they get are tailored to their preferences and they're relevant to them. We collect millions of different API calls every single minute across mobile devices and our customers and partners. And we want to make sure that we process this data as soon as possible. Because our customers, the consumer brands you may interact with, use this in order to send you messages. If Airbnb wants to send you a push notification 20 minutes after you hit a checkout page, but they don't want to send it to you if you've actually made the purchase and reserved the Airbnb, we need to know that you made that purchase and you booked that Airbnb as soon as possible. So timeliness becomes extremely important, and it matters for us to process that data as soon as we get it. The second type of thing that we process are just different types of messages that we send. So I mentioned we send tens of billions of messages every single month. These are things like emails, push notifications, web notifications, etc. We need to send those, and again, those have to happen as fast as possible. And they could happen by one of our customers logging into our platform and just kicking something off. So for example, iHeartRadio, which one of our customers, had a great Halloween promotion that they sent all through last weekend in order to get people to get like free trials. So they just came onto our dashboard, composed the messages, able to just send those off in an ad hoc manner. Or customers could schedule them or use an API to send that kind of messaging in a transactional fashion. So one of the things that is important when it comes to scaling is just the base level at which you build your infrastructure. And I just want to say as a bit of a footnote that one of the things that we do is we actually scale by putting customers on different databases and different pieces of physical hardware. So then we can look at, well, also before we kind of get there, I'll talk again about the messages that we send. So but tens of billions is a lot of messages. And if you kind of break that down, this is a graph of the number of messages that we sent every hour. This was a couple of months ago. You can see that we peak pretty high, about 140 million messages that we're sending every single hour. So that would mean in a 10-minute talk here, we might send about 20 million messages to consumers all around the world. And so it's important to have insight as to how many servers we need to have online in order to send those messages as fast as possible and then process data as well as fast as possible. So we break things out on our monitoring and our metrics to look at what can we observe about our current state and what can we observe about our future state. So if we look at our current state, I mentioned that we have millions of API calls coming in from devices and from our customers and partners every single minute. So we can get a sense for what data is coming in to understand what the current state is. And I mentioned a few moments ago that one of the ways in which we scale is that we can isolate different customers on different infrastructure. So what I see here is there's a graph where we have API calls, but we actually are able to break out the API calls that are going to be hitting different databases so that we can predict how much load is going to happen for certain customers that are on certain databases. So that gives us our current state. But then we also need to understand what is the future state that's going to come. So in this sense, we want to know how many messages we think we're going to be sending in the next, say, 15 minutes or the next hour, because we want to make sure that we have enough capacity online for that. So we also keep a number of different monitors and graphs on our side that allow us to kind of see what we think is going to happen. So there's a few things. One, it's easy if a customer says, we're going to send this email at 5 p.m. today to 10 million people. Then at least we know that it exists and that there's something at 5 p.m. that's going to go to 10 million people. We can kind of count that. But then there's some more that we may need to be a little bit more predictive on. So we can think about what have we seen yesterday? What do we have upcoming? What has changed that's run recently? We take all of that together. We use it to kind of put together these graphs and this data that you see here where we can kind of look at what's coming in the future. That we can make sure that we have the appropriate capacity for that. So if you take the state that you have in currently, so your current state is going to tell you how much you need in order to make sure that you can just process what's coming in real time, and then you take what you think you're going to do in the future, kind of combine that, you basically have enough knowledge to add servers. So what we do is we have a script on Amazon that runs every couple of minutes that does some math against these two different types of graphs, figures out how many servers you need to have online, and then scales them up and down throughout the day. So this graph behind me is actually a server count of the number of processes that are online every day, and you can kind of see some interesting things here that it's almost sinusoidal, but there are certain spikes at which you can see something happen at 1 in the morning where we ended up putting a lot of servers online, likely a European customer ended up sending an early morning email out to their consumers or something like that. Thanks, everyone.